Cowabunga, scumbags. It's me, your boy toy, Andrew Fantasia. I don't know why I said cowabunga. I guess that just sounds like a summer word. And that's appropriate because it's the Summer of Legends. Welcome back to the Summer of Legends here on the Rebel Scum Podcast Network. We are high grounding legends because there ain't anything else to high ground. So we are going to give you something rather than nothing. Legends is the name of the game. And throughout the Summer of Legends, I have been showing you paperback novels and essential guides. Well, before we move on to bigger, actually smaller things, but more on that at the end of the video, I have 3 more essential guides to show you. Yes, I am in fact swimming in guides. Now these last 3 are a bit harder to pin down. It's not like the other ones where it's like, this is about characters, this is about vehicles, etc. These ones take a different approach, and you'll see what I mean when we get there. But the last one we're talking about today is one of the most interesting, not just Star Wars books, but books, period, that I've ever read. And you'll see what I mean. So without further ado, it's the Summer of Legends, baby. Let's get started. Alright, let's switch cameras and I'll show you the last 3 essential guides. And before we do, I can hear your question, and the answer is yes. I did cut my own hair. And yes, I am glowing. Alright, so this is Jason Fry and Paul Urquhart's Essential Guide to Warfare. Now, I made a high ground about this not too long ago, because I actually just finished reading it. James and Aaron got me this for my birthday last year, and it took me a minute. It took me a hot minute, but I finally got to reading it. So I'm just going to flip through this very quickly just to give you an idea of what's inside. Whoop, there goes the cover. I can't control that. That's gravity. But if you want to see more in depth of this, then just watch that other high ground because I really took my time with it. But the way this essential guide works, as you can tell from the cover, this is Generation 3. The Generation 3 had very snazzy looking covers compared to the first 2. But essentially what you're looking at here is it's a history of the galaxy. There's some more of those nice maps. It's a history of the galaxy told through the eyes of war and warfare and weaponry and ships and stuff like that. So it's going to go through the galaxy chronologically and say, here's this war, here's that war. And it's going to tell the life story of the universe, but using war as the focal points. And that's basically all there is to it. So, you know, during the decline of the Republic, why was war happening during this time? Who was fighting? That's Tarkin's dad. Look, he looks like a real jerk-ass man. Who was fighting? Why were they fighting? And what were they using in the fight? You know, what armor, what weapons, what ships, etc., etc. That's how this whole book rolls. If you're a war fan and you like specs and you like knowing how many clone troopers are in a legion and how many legions are in a battalion, etc. I'm probably not even saying that right. It's probably how many battalions to a legion. I don't know. I'm not a general. I'm not Akbar. That's not my job. My job is to talk about stuff like this on the internet. But that's what this book is going to tell you. Look, it's going to, when Anakin talks about the Outer Rim sieges, this is what he's talking about, baby. He's talking about these things. This is giving you everything. What are the campaigns and everything? Here's a letter Ahsoka wrote while she was on the war front. That's what this book's all about. This is it. The cover does not lie. It is about warfare, plain and simple, and it doesn't skimp on it either. Like, look how many they do. So many profiles on different ships and what the ships can do and what the ships can't do. There's a breakdown of the Imperial Army codes that they wear on their lapels and what they all mean. There's some clones. There's Darth Vader being weird. There's some other pictures of things. That's how this book rolls, and it's cool. It's very, very heavy on the warfare. It's one of the most exhaustive essential guides, besides the Atlas, that you will find, because it really covers a lot of detail. Remember, every ship has its own detailed list of specs, and this gives you that along with, you know, the time period in which the ship was being used, and when and where and how and why. If you are a war junkie, if you are interested in the details of the military and how all their different weaponry works, you could not ask for a better book than this, The Essential Guide to Warfare. And Jason Fry and Paul Urquhart, they really know what they're talking about. They really get into it. And it's because of this book that I know some things I didn't know before about certain characters like Thrawn and Warlord Zinj and Admiral Peleon. They're all in here. All their fates are in here, and you find out a lot more about the way they waged war and the way war was in turn waged against them. There's some Yuuzhan Vong ships. No thank you, I don't want to fight them. All their ships are crazy living things. So this is the Essential Guide to Warfare, and I'm really breezing through it because you can see a much more detailed thing on this elsewhere on the channel. This is the first of the guides I am showing you today. Bada bing, bada boom. Now this here is Jedi vs. Sith, the Essential Guide to the Force. This one's by Ryder Wyndham, and you got Tommy Lee Edwards and Chris Trevis, woo, doing the illustrations. I can't get enough Chris Trevis. Now, this is sort of the counterpoint to the Essential Guide to Warfare. They really are two sides of the same coin. This told the story of the galaxy through the eyes of war and ships and guns. This tells the same story of the same galaxy from top to bottom, but through the eyes of Jedi, Sith, the Force, spirituality, religion, etc. In the basest terms possible, war and lore. If you have a preference, one of these two books is going to scratch that itch. I already prefer it to Warfare just because it has Chris Trevis art in it. Tommy Lee Edwards stuff is nothing to sneeze at either, but there's just something about the crisp colors that Chris Trevis brings to the table. And these are very thick pages. And now these books are told with a story kind of threading it throughout. It's not like the other Essential Guides where it's like, here is a dry description of a TIE fighter. Here, this is Tion Salazar. She is a Jedi who trained at Luke's Academy, and this whole book is written as if Tion was writing it herself, as if she is imparting her own knowledge into a holocron. Isn't that neat? Isn't that clever? She's just like, hey, what's up? I'm Tion. Here's my holocron, and you're going to learn all about what I know. And then she tells you all about Jocasta Nu in the library. Now, this I'm going to be roughly quick with, too, because it's not like the other books where I can be like, and this page is the Y-Wing fighter, and this page is Han Solo. This is a much different animal here. These new Essential Guides don't really follow that rule. These ones are, like I said, histories of the galaxy from top to bottom through the eyes of certain mechanics, whether it be war or, in this case, lore, Jedi, Sith, and the Force. But you get a great idea of how the Force has threaded throughout galactic events ever since the beginning of time, ever since the inception of the Jedi and the Sith. There's our friends from Knights of the Old Republic. There's Lord Hoth, who the planet Hoth is apparently named after. There's Darth Bane. Still think he's boring. I don't get it. I don't get why people love Darth Bane so much. Even his look, he's just a bald guy. Hey, I'm bald. I'm a Darth. Okay, whatever you say. There's a Chris Trevis drawing. All right, there we go. These pages are just rife with information about how the Force was present for all of these big galactic events, and not just in a bland sense where it's like, and here is this battle, and Luke Skywalker was in this battle, so that means the Force was present. No, it doesn't quite do that. It really gets down to how the outlook of the galaxy was because of the way Force users were treated or the status they had. You know, Jedi were revered during the Galactic Republic, so the Force was revered. Jedi were feared and hated during the Civil War, and nobody knew that the Emperor and Vader were Sith, so the Force was either a myth to some people, or it was known and it was a dark, creepy sorcery thing. You got to look no further than Mandalorian to see how people treated the Force. And hey, there's Mara Jade's funeral. Spoilers, she got killed in the books. And you go on and you talk about more stuff. There's Luke fighting Lumia, the Dark Lady, who was apparently a big villain in the books. And then part 2 touches on the Jedi themselves and how they rolled. And there's some kids being Jedi. And there's Bastila Shan from KOTOR. And they really just kind of talk about all kinds of things related to the Jedi, their history, what Force powers they have, what Force powers they don't have. There's the Ariel Poof with that neck. You can't beat that neck. There's a great picture of what young Count Dooku would have looked like. That's really cool. Chris Trevis nailed it. That's a young Christopher Lee. More powers, more good stuff, more Trevis art. Really in-depth detail on how all the powers work without breaking it down and taking away the mystery. This doesn't try to apply science to Force powers. It doesn't really get into midichlorians even too much. It doesn't explain like, this is scientifically what happens to the body when you do a Force choke or Force lightning or try a Jedi mind trick. No, they keep the mystery of that, and they just kind of explain this is how a Jedi learns it. This is sort of how it works and what it does to a person and how examples of how it has been used in history to sort of make a difference. It doesn't take away from the magic of the Force. And I like that, because if it did, not only would that, be a shame, but that would make this a very dry book. It would make it dry and technical and scientific. And I think that the technical stuff is good, it's fun, and that suited the war book, but it doesn't really suit this book. This book should be a little bit more romanticized and fantasy-ish. There's Grievous. And it's exactly that. It is romanticized and fantasy-ish, as it should be. So let's continue on here, and we go on with the lightsaber forms. I like these drawings a lot. They're just very cool little sketches. And again, Chris Travis art is just beautiful. I want murals of that on my ceiling. I want a whole Sistine Chapel of Travis. That's the world I want to live in. There's the Sun Crusher again. There's Yoda and some other folks. There's Aura Singh with a lightsaber. I don't remember that. And a lot of these paragraphs that you're seeing here, yes, they are written by Tion, who we saw at the beginning of the book, but then she will quote passages and like holocron entries and diary entries from other characters. So there will be entries in here written by people like Dooku, written by people like Palpatine and Luke and Mara Jade, or Jason and Jaina Solo. Like there's so much swapping between character POVs in this reference book. So they make it a story unto itself. And that just keeps it even more fresh and interesting, because you never know. You're going to turn the page. Well, that's beautiful. That is just, again, Sistine Chapel of Travis, please. But like I was saying, you never know when you turn the page who is going to be talking to you through the text. Travis drew young Palpatine with Plagueis in the background, and that's probably the best Palpatine has ever looked as a young man. Any other time I see young Palpatine, it just kind of skeeves me out. Or should I say, sheaves me out. Hey-o. This chapter is now all about the Sith. And what's really cool is that they had a chapter for the Sith, but they also have a separate chapter for the dark side. So this whole book is great in acknowledging the fact that these factions of Jedi and Sith are not synonymous with the light and the dark. The light and the dark are their own thing. The Force is its own thing. And like Luke wisely tells us in The Last Jedi, to say that the Force cannot exist without the Jedi is vanity. This book was dropping that truth before the movie dropped it. Sith alchemy, as we know, is what Palpatine was using to try to get access to the world between worlds. So a lot of this stuff is still very, very relevant. I haven't read that new book that came out last year, that Secrets of the Jedi book. It looks beautiful, the art in it looks great, but from what I hear, it's only like 50 pages long. And for like a $40 book, I'm sorry, but I'm not paying that much for such a short book. But I imagine it covers the same amount of stuff that this does, just with less Legends material thrown in there. So maybe if that book ever gets cheaper, I'll pick it up and take a look at it, because I really do love the art that they have. These are other cults and religions that worship the Force in their own way. There's a great picture of our three homies from the Phantom Menace. And this whole chapter is about the Chosen One. About, this is the final chapter. This is about Anakin's life and how the Force moved through him and how he altered the galaxy thanks to his ability in the Force. It talks a little bit about his training between episodes 1 and 2, something we don't really see a whole lot of, but I think that that's kind of a ripe ground for plucking. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. And then you got a girl in her underwear, but Darth Vader is telling her, hey, I want you to do this thing, and she's like, okay. I think she's one of the villains in Legends. And then we have the afterword, where they talk about Legacy, because Legacy was always sort of right at the tail end of Legends before everything ended, so they wanted to put that last. It always gets the final page. There's Cade Skywalker from Legacy. And then you have the index, and I love when indexes just spice things up by having art. Look at this beautiful art. Oh, and here they show you some of the other guides you can buy. And that is Jedi vs. Sith, the Essential Guide to the Force. And now, folks, I have saved this for last, because this one is probably my favorite. Feast your eyes on the Essential Reader's Companion by Pablo Hidalgo. And the illustrations inside are by a bunch of people, but mainly Chris Travis is there, so I'm happy. And Darren Tan is there too. Darren Tan does some great Star Wars art. The Essential Reader's Companion, I actually just got this a month ago for my birthday, and even though it's only been a month, I have read this cover to cover already because it's so damn good. The Essential Reader's Companion came out in, I want to say 2013 or something. What a beautiful picture. 2012. So this came out around the time of the Disney buyout. No more Legends stuff was being made. So the way this works is this tells you the story of the Star Wars Legends galaxy from ancient Republic to brand spanking new Republic in the Legacy comics, and it tells you every single book, not comic, unfortunately, but every single book, every novel in that story in chronological order, which is effing insane. So there's chapter 1, Tales of Ancient Jedi and Sith. You get all this great art, and it tells you, okay, the very first story chronologically is this book here. Here's who wrote it, John Jackson Miller. Here's when it came out. It's a relatively new one. It came out around the same time as this book, actually. And then where it is in the timeline, what worlds it visits, what main characters you get to meet, and then a summary of the book itself. And every once in a while, it does a little sidebar, a little side act bar about a comic, if the comic really ties into the books being talked about. And that is the Essential Reader's Companion. It's literally like 400 pages of just this, as you go through the whole galaxy chronologically, and it tells you the Star Wars story. There's the Darth Bane trilogy. There's some troopers. This is all still ancient times. Then you get to the height of the Republic, which is, hey, High Republic. There we are. We're getting there. And already we're close to episode 1. We've got these young reader novels that I remember reading. And it talks about young Obi-Wan and youngish Qui-Gon doing their thing. And what I loved so much about this book, despite just the friggin' awesomeness that I just described to you, is all these little books where I would turn a page and I would see a book like this and I'd be like, oh my God, I remember taking that out of the library in grade 7 and reading it. And I've never seen that book since. Like one of those Obi-Wan books I just showed you there. I did that. I read it at my school library and I was like, cool, this was a book by Scholastic about young Obi-Wan that I finished in like a day and then I never thought of again. It's in this. It brings back so many memories. It's incredible. And then when it gets to the movies, it shows you the covers of all the novel adaptations, because I guess with Phantom Menace, they had different covers. I remember reading this one. I used to have it, in fact. It was the junior novelization of the Phantom Menace. That is so effing cool. There's Darth Plagueis fighting some folks. And this just goes on and on and on. Now, I am not a person who has read a lot of Legends novels. I've said that many times. I own just the ones that I've shown you here on the Summer of Legends, which is not very many by comparison. Like, you see how many there are. Clearly, I own a small percentage of that. I did not really like the stories told in Legends novels enough to continue buying them and reading on throughout the story. But after reading this, after reading the Essential Reader's Companion, guys, wow, I gotta say, I am really happy this exists, because these summaries that I have read, and I've read every single page of this, so now I know the story. These summaries are intriguing to me to the point where I think that some of the books, not all of them, definitely not all of them, but some of these books that have been written in the Legends universe are interesting enough, just from the dry little summary, that I might want to pick some up and read them. Again, I gotta stress some, because, oh, by the way, there's Shatterpoint. I showed you that. That's one of the ones that I own. But yes, I stress the word some because, yeah, some of these do not sound great. There was one about a virus earlier that I showed. No, thank you. There was one about Thrawn somewhere in here where I read the summary, and it was just more of Thrawn being perfect and being like, I knew this all along, and now I caught the pirates, the end. No, thank you. Absolutely not. I don't care about Perfect Thrawn. But then you got some books in here that just sound friggin' wicked. Why would I not want to read them? Even some during what I thought I would not like at all, which is the Yuzhan Vong invasion. I didn't think, oh, there's young Thrawn right there. I didn't think that I would care about anything in the Yuzhan Vong stories. They just seemed really bland to me. But as I was reading the summaries of the Yuzhan Vong stories, I was like, okay, some of these sound okay. Some of these sound like I should actually read them, and I would have a good time. Thank you, Essential Reader's Companion. You have changed my mind and made me want to pick up books that I didn't necessarily want to pick up before. And they do another really cool thing in this that I absolutely love. That just, it's just above and beyond. They didn't have to do it, but the fact that they did it is so friggin' sweet. So let me find a good example of it. Look at that art. Let me find a nice example, and this is gonna blow your mind when you see it happen. All right, where are we here? Okay, here's a book. Let's go with this. See right here where it tells you what worlds were visited. So, we visited this world, this asteroid. And here's Kurita. We visited Kurita. Well, you can see here, after Kurita, there's this little thing here that says M9. Okay? What the hell is M9? Here is what the hell M9 is. This book connects with the other absolutely sexy source book, The Essential Atlas. And M9 is the coordinates in the galactic map in this atlas, in this entire other book. So you saw that that story took place, among other places, on the planet Kurita. So if you want to know where that is in the galaxy, you crack open your trusty Essential Atlas. There you go. You find M9. There's M, and we're going to go all the way up to 9. Let's see if it works. I've never tested this before. There's 9. M9 is right there, and I know it's small, but there is Kurita. That is friggin' awesome. And every book covered in the Reader's Companion has that. So even if a book visits like 20 worlds, it's going to tell you the coordinates of all those worlds, and you'll be able to find them on that map. That just blew my mind when I found that out. I was so happy that they did that. And then here you have the novelizations, the first novelizations of A New Hope. It goes through every edition, but I mean, there's the first one, and it shows you every edition of the novels. I think these ones are on bookshelves now. You can still find. That's the one I had. That's my favorite. I remember seeing ads for these in Star Wars Kids magazine. There is just a treasure trove of memories in here. Like I said, really lots of memories, because you get to the point where you see a book, you turn a page and it's like, oh, there's a book. And you're like, oh my God, I haven't seen that book since I was a child. And you're taken right back to it. And if we get to the page and I spot it, I'm going to point out one that really, here it is right here. This really threw me for a loop. I couldn't believe it. This, Galaxy of Fear. These books, Galaxy of Fear, they were basically Star Wars' answer to Goosebumps. And I loved Goosebumps growing up. I had like 40 or 50 Goosebumps books. And I loved Star Wars growing up, but I never knew that there was a mesh between the two. And one day we were on a field trip. We were at school and we were going to a field trip to like the Science Center or something. And I was sitting next to my buddy Jake, and my buddy Jake had this book in his backpack. And he was like, hey, do you want to read this? And I was like, okay, we're on the bus. I'm waiting for us to get to the Science Center. So he hands me this book and I read it on the bus, which is weird because I can't even read on vehicles because I get motion sickness. I don't know how I didn't get motion sickness that day, but I was reading this book on that field trip on the way to the Science Center. And then I never saw that book again or even heard about this series again after that day. And now this Essential Reader's Guide is reminding me, hey, yeah, that existed once upon a time. And God, that made me happy. That just took me right back. I was a kid again on that school bus, and I owe it all to Pablo Hidalgo and the good people who made this book. I don't think there's ever been anything like this before in terms of source books for anything. This is a whole other level of special. And I've never seen any of the other Star Wars source books except the old guide to characters call attention to the names of the stories in which all these things were taking place. Even great books like the Galactic Atlas don't say, if you'd like to learn more about Thrawn, read such and such. None of the books do that. The old character guide would say, hey, the first appearance of Gilad Pelion is in Heir to the Empire. And that's all it would tell you, is just the name Heir to the Empire, which at least is something. But this finally sheds light on those stories and says, hey, you know how everybody kind of knows the story of Dengar and how Dengar doesn't like Han Solo? Do you know where that story came from? It came from this book right here, and it tells you all about that book right here. That's kind of what I have wanted my whole life, and I didn't even realize it. I wanted to know, hey, just in case I want to read about Lando Calrissian finding the Mind Harp of Sharu, what book was that in? And this will tell you. And yeah, it's not exhaustive. Like I said, it doesn't really cover comics unless it's in a sidebar and unless they have to do with what's being covered in the novels. So it doesn't go through any of the Old Republic comics or Legacy or anything like that. So if you are really a diehard fan of either the Marvel or Dark Horse Star Wars comics, you're not going to get a whole lot in here. But there's so much that's already in here that you don't even miss it. As I was flipping through this, I didn't even realize that I was missing the comics because there already is so much packed in these pages that I just was like a kid in a candy store. There's Leia fighting a Hutt with a lightsaber. That just sums the whole thing up. And they're all in chronological order, of course, not publishing order. So now we're at the point where you can tell this is after Return of the Jedi. much after, there's old Han fighting old Boba Fett. This is past the Thrawn trilogy at this point. We are getting very close to the Yuuzhan Vong invasion and everything that happened afterwards. So it was kind of cool for me too, because I never knew how the Star Wars Legends story ended, chronologically at least. I never knew what was the last story ever told about Luke, Leia, and Han in Legends. The answer is in here. Unless that last story was a comic, in which case the answer is not in here. But you get so much goodness, and there you are. Now we're in the Yuuzhan Vong territory. You get so much goodness in here that it almost feels like you read the books without reading the books. And Pablo himself even says in the introduction, he says, none of these paragraphs are a substitute for reading the story. Like, this does not do the story justice. He says, if you want to know more, read the story, because it's written by, talented authors who put a lot of work into it. There's Han Solo's daughter making out with a TIE pilot. Ow! So yes, I do feel like I know the story, but I also feel like I want to read more and experience these books as they were meant to be experienced. And for my whole life, as big a Star Wars fan as I have been, I have never really wanted or cared to read pretty much any of these Legends novels until I picked this up and I saw that, yes, there are some gems in this pile of fiction. They don't all sound like winners, but the ones that do really piqued my interest. And I'm so glad that this book shed light on those for me. And I'm very happy to have been proven wrong, because before, if you would have asked me, I would have said, Legends was just a bunch of books that mostly sucked. And you know what? Maybe most of them still do, if not suck, then still do kind of underwhelm. But I want to give these a fair shot and read the ones that sounded like they might be up my alley. Look at that. There's lightning. That's lightning, baby. And then he shows you the publication order of the books. And that is the very heavy Essential Reader's Companion by our main man, Mr. Pablo Hidalgo. Guys, I can't stress enough how cool that Essential Reader's Companion is. If you get a chance, pick it up. You will not be disappointed. But that is the end of our look at Essential Guides. However, it's not the end of the Summer of Legends. Next week, I am shrinking things down to little size because I'm going to take you on a journey through something that nearly killed my bank account. We're talking about the collectible Star Wars miniatures game. That's coming up next on the Summer of Legends. I will see you there, my friends. Until then, may the force of others be with you.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.